There is a part of you that you have been hiding your entire life, not only from other people, but from yourself. It contains the anger you were taught to suppress, the desires you learned to judge, the weakness you were afraid to reveal, and perhaps even the courage, ambition, and creativity you never gave yourself permission to express. Carl Jung called this hidden personality the shadow. But the shadow is not simply your evil side. It is something far more personal, far more complicated, and far more powerful. To understand it, imagine an ancient world in which humanity possesses no fire. People live in darkness, freeze at night, and remain powerless before nature. High above them, the gods possess the flame, and Zeus has decided that humanity must remain without it. But one titan refuses to accept this order. Prometheus steals a burning ember from the gods, hides it inside a hollow stalk, and carries it down to humanity. With that stolen fire, the human world changes forever. Fire brings warmth, technology, craftsmanship, knowledge, and power. But Zeus is furious. Prometheus is chained to a mountain, where an eagle tears out his liver each day, only for it to grow back each night, so the punishment can begin again. He gives humanity light, but is condemned to darkness. This myth is not a direct explanation of Jungian psychology, but it gives us a powerful image of the shadow. Fire represents something forbidden yet necessary: power, rebellion, intelligence, desire, transformation. Zeus represents order and the part of consciousness that says, this must remain controlled. Prometheus represents the force that refuses to stay buried, and the punishment reveals a central truth about the psyche. What is forbidden does not simply disappear. It returns and demands recognition. Every human being develops an identity. You learn to say, this is who I am. Perhaps you see yourself as kind, rational, disciplined, independent, loyal, or strong. But the moment you define yourself, you also begin excluding whatever does not fit that definition. If you identify as kind, you may reject your aggression. If you identify as strong, you may reject your vulnerability. If you identify as rational, you may distrust your emotions. These rejected qualities do not cease to exist. They are pushed outside the conscious personality, and they become shadow. Jung described the shadow as the part of the personality the conscious ego does not recognize or does not wish to become. In one of his sharpest formulations, he called it the thing a person has no wish to be. But this is where the idea is often misunderstood. The shadow is not a supernatural entity living inside you, and it is not proof that your authentic self is secretly cruel. It is the relationship between the identity you consciously accept and the qualities you unconsciously reject. Imagine a child growing up. The child expresses anger and is told, "Good children do not behave like that." The child cries and hears, "Stop being weak." The child speaks proudly and is accused of showing off. Gradually, the child learns which parts of the personality receive love and which parts create discomfort. So the child adapts. This is necessary because human beings need restraint, responsibility, and empathy. But adaptation always has a cost. To become acceptable to the family, school, religion, community, or culture, certain parts of the personality are pushed underground. The socially acceptable identity becomes what Jung called the persona, the mask through which we meet the world. The persona is not necessarily false. We all need it. You cannot behave exactly the same way at work, at home, with strangers, and with your closest friends. The problem begins when you believe the mask is the whole person. The more tightly you cling to a perfect identity, the more of yourself you are forced to exclude. Someone who must always appear generous may become secretly resentful. Someone who must always appear intelligent may become terrified of mistakes. Someone who must always appear peaceful may express aggression through sarcasm, silence, or moral superiority. The shadow grows strongest where certainty is strongest, and one of the main ways it reveals itself is through projection. Projection occurs when something inside us is experienced as though it exists only outside us. Imagine a person at work who says yes to every request. They stay late, help everyone, and pride themselves on being easygoing. They believe setting boundaries is selfish. Then a new colleague arrives who speaks directly, protects their time, and refuses unreasonable demands. The first person cannot stand them. They call them arrogant and self-centered. Perhaps the colleague really is difficult. But the intensity of the reaction may reveal something more. The freedom to say no has been buried in the first person's shadow. Projection does not mean every criticism is secretly about you. Harmful people exist, and harmful behavior should be recognized clearly. The real question is why certain people occupy so much space in your mind. Why does their behavior produce a reaction much larger than the situation seems to require? The shadow often announces itself through disproportion. In the person you cannot stop hating, the criticism you cannot tolerate, or the desire you refuse to name. But the shadow contains more than aggression, jealousy, greed, and shame. This may be the most misunderstood part of Jung's idea. It can also contain positive qualities. A person raised to be obedient may place assertiveness in the shadow. A person taught to remain invisible may repress charisma. A person rewarded for being practical may bury imagination. A person taught that ambition is selfish may sabotage every opportunity for success. In these cases, the shadow contains not only darkness, but unlived life. This is sometimes called the golden shadow, the admirable qualities we recognize in others but cannot yet claim in ourselves. You may be fascinated by someone's courage because your own courage remains unconscious. You may envy someone's freedom because a forbidden part of you wants the same freedom. Envy is not always proof of malice. Sometimes it is information. It may reveal the direction in which your unlived personality wants to grow. This is why Jung did not believe the goal of psychological development was to become perfectly good. The goal was to become more whole. Wholeness does not mean acting on every impulse. Recognizing your aggression does not give you permission to become violent, and recognizing forbidden desires does not mean every desire should be obeyed. Integration is the ability to say, "This exists within me, and therefore I am responsible for how I relate to it." Before integration, anger may control you while you insist that you are not angry. After integration, you may recognize it early enough to understand its message and choose what to do with it. Before integration, ambition may emerge as jealousy towards successful people. After integration, it may become disciplined effort. The unconscious quality does not vanish. Its form changes when consciousness enters the relationship. This pattern appears far beyond Jung's writings. In Egyptian mythology, Set is associated with violence, disorder, storms, and the murder of Osiris. Yet in some traditions, he also defends the solar god Ra against the serpent of chaos. The destructive force becomes protective when it is given a place within the whole. In Buddhist traditions, Mara confronts the Buddha with fear, desire, doubt, and temptation before enlightenment. These forces are not overcome through denial, but through recognition without submission. The same warning appears in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Jekyll tries to divide himself into two separate beings, one respectable and one forbidden. But what he refuses to integrate grows stronger because it has been separated from responsibility. Acting out the shadow is not the same as integrating it. A person controlled by rage has not integrated rage. They have simply become possessed by it. Prometheus returns us to the same problem. Fire can warm a home or burn down a city. It can create tools or weapons. The problem is not the existence of fire, but whether we can develop a conscious relationship with its power. Your aggression may help you protect a boundary. Your selfishness may reveal exhaustion. Your envy may expose an unlived ambition. Even qualities we dislike can contain useful energy, but only when they are acknowledged and given a responsible form. The shadow becomes even more dangerous when it joins a group. A community can project its unwanted qualities onto an outsider. It begins to imagine that it represents purity, goodness, reason, or truth, while all cruelty and disorder belong to another tribe, class, nation, religion, generation, or political movement. Once the enemy carries the group's shadow, almost any action against that enemy can feel justified. The more perfectly innocent we imagine ourselves to be, the more completely evil the other side must become. Recognizing the shadow begins with attention. Notice the reactions that are unusually intense. Notice the qualities you condemn most quickly, the people you envy, and the patterns that repeat despite your conscious intentions. This is not an invitation to blame yourself for everything. It is an invitation to become curious about the part of every conflict that belongs to you. The shadow rarely introduces itself politely. It appears through defensiveness, obsession, resentment, attraction, embarrassment, and repetition. The shadow is not asking to rule your life. It is asking to be included in the truth about who you are. You cannot become whole while building your identity around everything you refuse to see. You cannot understand your motives if you examine only the motives that flatter you. And you cannot carry the fire of consciousness while pretending you have no capacity to burn. So the most useful question is not, do I have darkness inside me? You do. So does everyone else. The more useful question is this: what part of your life is being controlled by something you still refuse to call your own? And what buried strength might return if you finally turn toward it? The real danger is not that darkness exists within us. It is that we remain unconscious of it. The purpose of confronting the shadow is not to become perfect. It is to stop being divided. If you want to continue exploring the myths, symbols, and hidden psychological patterns shaping your life, subscribe to Archetype Unbound. And before you leave, ask yourself one question. What quality in other people affects you so deeply that it may be trying to reveal something about you?